Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to the North Platte City Council meeting here on September 6, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. here in the City Hall Council chambers. Those of you that are standing out in the hallway, if you'd like, we're in the process of opening up the conference room down there if you'd like to sit in there, and if you want to speak, just come up during that phase of the meeting, please. So, hate to leave people standing in the hallway for hours at a time. So. Okay, calling the meeting to order. We have an invocation by our own Pastor Joe Sucroft from Hope Embraced.
Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you, God, for seasons, and that the season of summer will soon turn into fall. We will appreciate the cooler weather, Lord, and thank you for sustaining us through all the heat and the dryness. And God, we know that rain would be a favor from you. God, I pray for this meeting tonight. I thank you for our city, for those who serve. I pray, God, for wisdom. Pray, God, that we'd first of all seek your will for our lives and for our community. God, I just want to say a special prayer for our fire chief and the efforts that he's making to remember September 11th. Give him the strength and the energy, and help us all to remember what it means to be American. I'm not sure a lot of people realize that today. But bring us together, Lord, for a common purpose, to realize we have been founded to be one nation under God, indivisible. As we will soon speak those words, may they be words that are more than just something we recite, but something we really mean. So God, just give wisdom as this meeting concurs. We pray your blessing over our community, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Joe. Roll call, Angie.
Nisling?
Here.
Tryon? Here. Holes?
Here.
Lucas?
Here.
Garrick?
Here.
Landers?
Here.
Reeker?
Here.
Woods?
Here.
Thank you. A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. Meeting procedure. The public may address specific agenda items at the pleasure of the mayor. If recognized by the mayor, please identify yourself by stating your name and your address. Please address the council through the mayor and limit your remarks. We respect our city employees and request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired at a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Now tonight in the awards and accolades section is where we usually swear in new police officers. So we have an opportunity to welcome our North Platte's newest police officer and as well as his trainer. Please bring him in and introduce him. Do not attempt to pet the police dog. Captain or Chief Reeves.
So this is the newest member of our team, Briggs. He's a full-blood German Shepherd. Born in 2020, come to us via Hungary, later a vendor in Holland. Then we purchased him from Blue Street K9 in Jonesboro, Arkansas. We were able to purchase K9 with a donation from Beverly and Arthur Dismukes. They made a donation specifically toward the care and purchase of a K9. We've had him since about June. Officer Johnson, Officer Wilkerson here went down to Jonesboro, had a selection of dogs down there from a police dog vendor. This was the guy they came home with. We had originally planned to go to training this fall to the NSP camp in Grand Island. In June, they canceled their fall camp. Luckily, Lincoln PD graciously took us in, allowed us to start their training camp July 11th. Officer Wilkerson was down there for 6 weeks. He had both classroom and practical training that resulted in a written test that he successfully passed, and then I was able to go down on August 18th for his certification, which was a practical certification. They did it at different places. A lot of the searches we did were at the Devaney Center, some at the K9 facility, some at a tow lot, and we ended at a horse stable. It was very interesting. For me, this guy here seemed a little more tense. At the conclusion of the day, we were able to obtain a certification for Officer Wilkerson and Briggs, so they are in service. Officer Wilkerson come to the North Platte Police Department in 2014. He didn't really know it, but he had two instructors down there, certifying instructors, and they were present at different parts. So when we were at the Devaney Center, one of them was there, and then at the horse stable, the other one came. They both told me that they were very impressed with his skills and his dedication to the training program, his participation in their training program, and assured me that I had picked a very good person to be our handler. So I just wanted to introduce Briggs and say thank you to Officer Wilkerson for all his dedication and hard work in getting the dog certified while he was in Lincoln.
Thank you. Hold for the photo op.
Come on, it's your chance. No, gonna have to try that again. Here we go. One more. All right, you're a good subject, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to have to start bringing treats to city council meetings. Consent agenda. All matters under the consent agenda are considered by the city council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any city council member may, however, remove an item from consent by request. Okay, folks, there's a little bit of meeting wizardry going on tonight here, and I want to explain for those of you that don't normally attend. It is a state statute that the cities of our size have to have a specifically scheduled budget public hearing. And so we scheduled that a couple weeks ago at 6:30 p.m. this evening, okay? So at 6:29, this meeting will probably still be going. And so we will recess this meeting, have that budget-based public hearing, which typically takes somewhere between 20 minutes and 30 minutes. And then we will end that meeting, and then we will resume this meeting at that point, okay? Just so all of you know what's going on, that's what's going on. After I read this really long consent agenda here. Okay. Approve the minutes of the August 16, 23, and 25, 2022. Approve the application by Fraternal Order of Eagles number 2839 for a special designated license on September 24th, 2022 from 4 p.m. to 12 a.m. at the DNN Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for the Pheasants Forever fundraiser. Approve the application by Aiden Enterprises LLC for a special designated license on October 1, 2022 from 3 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. at the DNN Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for a wedding reception. Approve the application by Pal's Brewing Company for a special designated license on October 15, 2022 from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the DNN Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for the Roller Derby. Approve the application by Big Red Liquor for a special designated license on November 11, 2022 from 7 p.m. to 1 a.m. at the DNN Event Center, 501 East Walker Road for the MCF-MMA Entertainment Fights. Number 6, approve the addition to liquor license for Capone's at 2520 Halligan Drive. Number 7, authorize the mayor to execute interlocal advanced life support BLS agreements with Area Basic Life Support Services. Number 8, approve the mayor's recommendation to appoint Kathy Swain to the tree board. Number 9, approve the mayor's recommendation to appoint Michelle McNay to the tree board. Number 10, approve the mayor's recommendation to appoint Caitlin Holm to the Citizens Advisory Review Committee. Number 11, approve the mayor's recommendation to appoint Kathleen Matthews to the City of North Platte Planning Commission. Number 12, approve the mayor's recommendation to reappoint John Patterson and Greg Wilkie to the Board of Adjustment and to reappoint Robert Stefka as the alternate member of the Board of Adjustment. Number 13, adopt Planning Commission's recommendation for preliminary and final approval of the Mulligan Meadows First Subdivision located at 1517 through 1621 Adams Avenue. Number 14, approve the application to the U.S. Department of Transportation for $200,000 in grant funds to assist the City of North Platte in creating a Safe Streets 4 all-action plan and authorize the mayor to sign, submit, and execute all related documents. Number 15, approve the application of the U.S. to the U.S. Department of Transportation for $7 million in grant funds to assist the City of North Platte with the City of North Platte Bridge Repair, Improvement, and Replacement Project, and authorize the mayor to sign, submit, and execute all related documents. Number 16, approve the agreement between the City of North Platte and the Public Service Union, Nebraska Public Employees, Local 251, for the term between October 1, 2022 through September 30, 2024.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion Nisly, second Reeker to approve the consent agenda. Calling the question. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, is it too late to ask a question?
Go ahead.
What is the responsibility of the Citizens Advisory Review Committee?
That's the LB 840 or the Quality Growth Fund Committee.
All right, thank
Yep.
you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Lucas?
just a question on number 15. I guess maybe just ask that we pull number 15 off for a couple quick questions off the consent agenda.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. You guys are making my sheet complex here. Okay. Actually, you don't have to second that, so we're okay. But, okay, anyway, any other questions before we move on? Okay, number 15 is pulled. We will consider it. Calling the question on everything except 15 on the consent agenda. Okay, everything passes except 15. We will now consider 15. Your questions, Mr. Lucas?
Yeah, I just wanted to better understand, because it's such a large item and grant, that the timing of this, is this something that we've been planning for a while? Did a funding opportunity came up? How does that affect what we're seeing in the budget, the upcoming budget?
Councilman Lucas, it is, some of the new transportation funding is what came up, and so part of this is about $600,000. It's in our bridge improvement plan, and some of it's some new projects. So a big portion of this would be State Farm Road to replace that 1930s era bridge out there and widen that, but it's also for our other viaducts in town and some things. And so it's a preliminary number that, as more engineering, if the grant would come through, we would hone that down, but that's kind of where we arrived at that figure and what the projects would be.
Okay. Is it a source of funding that has a pretty good probability of achieving it, or some part of it, or what does that?
It's new funding, so
Okay.
we're not real sure. I think we have a fairly good shot at it. We're gonna, make a good effort at it, but I can't say it's 100% by any means.
Okay. Thank you.
This is federal funding, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else? Other questions or thoughts? Calling the question on number 15. The buttons are persnickety tonight. Okay. Number 15 is passed as well. Moving on to the regular agenda. Authorize the mayor to execute a contract, number 17, authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Pierce Manufacturing, Inc. for the purchase of one 107-foot aerial quint for the fire department.
Move to authorize the mayor to execute a contract with Pierce Manufacturing, Inc. for the purchase of one 107-foot aerial quint.
Second.
Motion Garrick, second Reeker. Any discussion on item number 17?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Lucas?
Just a quick question is, will we retain our 1999, or if not, what's the estimated residual value?
Chief, would you fill us in, please?
Dennis Thompson, Fire Chief, North Platte. Councilman Lucas, Mayor Kelleher, we will not retain that apparatus. And what we have found in the past as we have replaced equipment, fire apparatus really do not have any value for resale due to the fact that a lot of things, but their safety features aren't what they need to be today, and rebuilds are just outlandish.
Okay. No, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, is that little red light on that
It
mic?
is.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I can't see it
That
from
help?
here tonight.
That help?
for some reason. There you go, thank you. I'll make sure the folks at home can hear you. Other questions for the chief while we have him here?
So I presume, excuse me, Chief, I presume that that will be put on the market and you'll get what you can get out of it, or is that the plan?
Well, that's what we would do. We, occasionally, a small department somewhere in the state or across the country will pick one up that just doesn't have the ability to do so otherwise. So for those little rural departments, they have some value. But we've even tried in the past selling through Big Iron, some of the big companies, and there's just too much liability in selling a used fire apparatus.
Okay, thank you.
Donna, did you have a question?
Yes, I did. Do we just have one? The fire department just has one of these trucks?
We have a ladder truck at our public safety building, the main station, that has a bucket on it. The Quint is a ladder truck without a bucket, used for rescue and suppression, just like the ladder truck does, but without that bucket capability.
Okay, calling the question on number 17, please. Thanks, Dennis. Number 17 is passed. Number 18, refer the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, North Platte Southwest Study Area as prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants, Inc., to the City of North Platte Planning Commission for a public hearing to determine if the proposed area qualifies as blighted and substandard.
Mr. Mayor, I move to refer the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, North Platte Southwest Study Area, as prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants, Inc., to the City of North Platte Planning Commission for public hearing to determine if the proposed area qualifies as blighted and substandard.
Second.
Motion Vols, second Garrick. Any discussion on item number 18?
Mr. Mayor, what has precipitated this action here tonight?
Primarily a need for housing.
So this is city-owned land.
That's correct.
Is there some idea of how this, I mean, if the city was gonna retain ownership, we wouldn't be eligible for TIF. So there must be some mechanism of putting this into private ownership, is that the plan?
Yes, there's a whole team of folks that have been working on the possibility to develop this land going forward. But the mechanism and the pricing is such that if it isn't blighted and substandard, it probably won't work.
And so, how will we determine who the purchaser will be? Will this be put out for an auction type of a situation, or how are we gonna divest it from city ownership to private ownership?
The developer would purchase it.
And how do we determine who that developer's gonna be, I guess? Is that gonna be a high bid, or how will that be determined?
Currently, there's only one developer engaged and interested, and this is a developer that also brings a construction company, which is something we desperately need in this area. So,
Okay, thank you.
so I guess in answer to your question, it wouldn't be auctioned. We would make the arrangement with the developer. But it will be a public process, and if someone wants to compete, we'll certainly listen to their proposal. But it's based on the history, it's unlikely we'll have a competing proposal. So,
Thank you.
yep. Other questions on item number 18?
Mr. Mayor, a question
Lucas?
for clarification. I think just one portion of this land is city-owned, and there's also quite a bit of acreage that's not city-owned in it. So I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page
Oh,
there.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening carefully. You're right about that. Yes, that's correct. Thank you for the correction.
Mr. Mayor, are there any other options that are being looked at in regards to this property as far as possibly the city developing it and selling the lots off to individual home builders or home building companies that would be interested in buying a block of lots for development?
We have not considered that option beyond the discussion that you and I had a month or so ago. but running the math on it and base what we're getting from developers, the math does not work to get the lot price down to where the house would sell for less than $450,000 a house.
Thank you.
And in future meetings, we'll likely be sharing all that math and everything, so it's not like it's going to be hidden or something. But,
Thank
okay,
you.
yeah. Other thoughts or questions? Calling the question on number 18, please. Number 18 is passed. Number 19, action on ordinance number 4101, amending section 116.17 to the North Platte Code of Ordinances relating to hours of sale of alcoholic beverages on Sunday. Lane, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 4101, an ordinance to amend chapter 116, title 11, section 17 of the North Platte City Code of Ordinances to provide additional time to sell alcoholic beverages on Sundays, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 4101, an ordinance amending section 116.17 of the North Platte City Code of Ordinances relating to hours of sale for alcoholic beverages on Sundays as presented in the materials.
Motion Lucas, second Garrick. I think that's who won. Over there. Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
I'd be happy to make a couple comments about it, if that's
Go
okay,
ahead.
Mayor. Yeah, the summary here is that I was approached initially by two businesses with a request for us to give consideration, or for me to help them with the process of reaching out to the mayor to alter the Sunday rules to being the same as the other days, and the reasons for that were outlined in that collective letter. Upon that, those contacts, I reached out to several other businesses that I thought had maybe a similar interest, and got an overwhelming response of, yes, we would really appreciate it if you guys would consider this. And I guess maybe a question I have too, is this a 3-reading item? And I'm not advocating for a waiver of readings, but I just wanted to clarify that we were likely voting on, does this take 3 shots, or?
It's not a new ordinance, so it's just one.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's just a one because it's a modification, okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page with that.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment. I received the letter, and you can see in the documents here that who it was signed by, roughly when it came. The signatures, for the sake of security, are blocked out in the copies since it's public information, but you can see the names next to them. So there's several of our local restaurants that were interested in this, who are, I think many of them, looking at doing buffets on Sunday morning and that sort of thing, and want to be able to serve mimosas or that sort of thing. So, anyone else have any thoughts or questions on number 19?
Mayor, if I may make a comment, it looks like this was primarily from places that wanted to do on sale. And now we're amending them, as I understand, the ordinance will be changed to on and off sale alcohol. And I'm just curious. It just seems to me that the purpose was to have on sale at restaurants, and now we're jumping ahead to off sale 8 o'clock on Sunday morning. I just.
You're welcome to recommend an amendment if you'd like, Mr. Nisling.
Well, I would, quite frankly, I don't like the idea anyway, but I do understand the restaurants. I would have moved to amend that it be on sale from 8 o'clock till noon, and then off sale from thereafter on Sundays.
So you'd say off sale from noon to 1 a.m., is that correct? Okay.
Second.
Who said second? I'm sorry, was that Ed? Okay, so we have a motion by Nisling and a second by Reeker to do on sale from 8 a.m. until 11:59 a.m., and then from noon to 1 a.m. would be as it is today. Any discussion on that amendment? Donna?
No. So if we vote on that amendment, then that's the only vote we'll have on this.
Well, we'll resolve this amendment first, and then we'll go back to the question, the original question as amended, and then there'll be another vote.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, calling the question on the amendment, which is, sorry.
Just
Mr.
real
Bowles.
quick, so the definition of on-site sale, so we're talking about, I'm just curious about golf courses. So you have you have 10 acres there. Would that be considered on-site or off-site?
I can't, I'd have to ask.
Yeah, I just don't know the answer to that, because that was one in here, golf courses for tournaments and stuff. So I don't know the answer, I'm just trying to think where we can get bugabooed on this a little bit.
If I may, Mayor, I know at one time the liquor store owners, you know, weren't upset about not having it open till noon. At least they had some time off. They had employees have time off. That's my question. If we open it up, then all the liquor stores, in the spirit of competition, I guess, have to be open 8 o'clock on Sunday, and I'm not too sure that's really what the intent of this was.
I don't think it was the intent, and it in no way requires the liquor store owners to open. So, Chief Breathes, do you have any insight in the on-sale, off-sale discussion?
I have a couple things that we might consider, and I don't really know the answers to, but now that this came up, two things, it's usually by the license class, not on sale, off sale. And then we need to probably look at the state statute that was amended during COVID, where they were allowing off sale that had been previously just on sale establishments or on-site establishments. I don't profess to be the expert in there without looking, but it would be worth a look before you make an amendment that is contrary to the statute.
Let me give just one perspective if I could. When I was talking about this with my wife goes, "Oh, thank goodness, when I'm at Walmart at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning and I got a bottle of wine in there, I don't have to look, return it back and figure out what's going on." Thank you. So, in my opinion, I say we just clean it up and make it a clean slate, whether it's Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, doesn't matter. That's my opinion though, so.
I can tell you that even with the noon sales now, some of the off-sale don't open. I mean, they're welcome to, they have to stay within those hours, but it doesn't mean they have to open at 8 and some don't.
Thank you, Chief.
I'm concerned about the liquor laws too. I don't even know if we can do that, quite frankly, but I think what I'm gonna do is just withdraw my amendment.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the law application.
Okay.
I don't like it, but I'll withdraw it, okay?
Amendment is withdrawn. I'm in a conference with the attorney here for just a second. After conferring with the attorney, I wonder if it might be a good idea for us to do a bit more research on what exactly this should look like. And so if someone would be interested in tabling this to the next meeting or something along those lines, we could then do some more research. And there is really no great hurry to resolve this particular question in our community, so.
I would move to table it.
Second.
Motion by Nisley, second by Lucas to table. Calling the question on tabling item number 19 until the next meeting. Item number 19 is tabled. Excuse me. Yes, that's correct. Item number 19. Okay. Item number 20. Approve the resolution between the City of North Platte and LARM for property and liability insurance and workers' compensation insurance.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the resolution between the City of North Platte and LARM for property and liability insurance and workman's compensation insurance with the term of 1 year. Excuse me, I want to make sure I got my year right. Just a second. I'm sorry, with the term of 2 years, if I could correct that, please.
And do you want the 90 or the 180-day termination period? Because that affects the rates also.
Right. My apologies, my notes aren't as good on this. I wasn't planning to make the motion. I want the shortest opportunity that we have to start discussions.
Previous, we had the 180-day, and that
Yeah.
gave us time to go out for, 90 days pretty short to try and get out an RFP and then get things back. I guess
Right.
I would suggest the 180.
Yeah, that'd be fine. Sorry for the clumsiness here, but to finish my motion, the 2 year with the 180-day notice.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table for a contract with LARM for 2 years with a 180-day out clause.
I would second.
Second by Vols, motion by Lucas. Okay, discussion on item number 20. Before we start discussing, I'm going to ask Lane to tell a little bit about how we got here, and then we do have some gentlemen from LARM here, you can see by their shirts, who may have some insight as well. So,
All right, Mr. Mayor, so we started the process in the spring with Charlesworth to look at our insurance needs, look at what we had for current coverage, and then to put it out as an RFP for firms to bid. After that process, we had 2 firms that showed interest. They had some question and answer period over the summer, and it got to the point, as you have in your packet, the materials, only one decided to actually put forth a proposal, and that's where we're at today. So there's some suggestions by both those that have looked at things of how we can maybe bring down our workman's comp costs in the future that we'll be looking at, which will also then maybe make it more enticing for other people to possibly bid on it in the future. But I think the 2-year term's a good compromise.
Mr. Mayor, what I was trying to get it out for discussion to answer my questions was what I couldn't determine from the materials was if we guarantee the time of the contract in exchange for the discount, do they guarantee us what the rate is at renewal? Or we're just guaranteed to be with them whatever rate they decide it's going to be? Or how does that work?
It could vary based on number of factors that's common in the insurance industry. So that's for the first year, and then the second year could be different, but I'll let them speak to that if there's anything representatives want to.
Nate Fox, Fox Insurance, representative for LARM from Oxford, Nebraska. So, yes, Lane is correct. As far as the rates, 2-year, 3-year commitment does not lock in your rate for each of those further years. Like most things, insurance rates go up year over year. And so it would be essentially the same rate as what you see across the rest of the members of LARM. So.
One thing that may, because workman's comp is on a rotating or yearly, that we could see some improvements in our workman's comp, because we have seen some improvements in our rating, or as far as our incident rating, and so we're hoping that in a year or 2 we're going to see that change, as long as we can continue on our safe path that we've had. And the property side of it's been fairly flat, as we see in the budget. We usually, budget an increase in there, but it's been fairly flat on that part. The workman's comp's been our kind of thorn in our side, so.
And is 180 days a sufficient, I don't have the experience in the insurance world, is that a sufficient time to where a competing bid could hold a quote, or does that box out competing quotes because they can only hold one for, say, 90 days or less? And maybe that's a question for Mr. Vols, but.
Probably a
Or
better
for-
question
for-
for you. I
for
don't deal with
Nate.
things this
Yeah,
big. What do
right.
you think?
180 days is a good time frame. It allows enough time to get the information gathered without having to rush it. You're right, though, as far as committing to a rate, most companies won't do that more than 90 days, maybe even 60 days out. I've seen that in some communities. So, but especially with a community your size, there's a significant amount of work
Right.
that goes into inputting all the data, information, coverages, to get to a point where they're ready to put a rate on it. So the 180-day notice, as Lane said, 90 days, that would definitely be problematic for companies to try to get a bid to you.
Okay.
And just to, I kind of looked at this, I'm not an expert like you guys are in big municipalities and everything, but I looked at the bang for our buck with the 4% discount on the 2-year versus the 3. It's nice to get a review every couple years. Things change, and things are changing a lot around here right now. So, and we're making policy and procedure that could drive our work comp, could drive some other areas, employee benefits, and that down a little bit. So I think it's good to re-examine this after 2 years. And the discount was only 1%. I felt the 2-year point with a 180-day look was a real good factor there. So thanks for that.
Other questions or comments on item number 20? Calling the question on item number 20, please. Number 20 is passed. Thank you. Item number 21, approve the employee contract and appointment for the city administrator position between the city of North Platte and M. Lane, also known as Lane, Grosseth, effective September 7, 2022.
I move to approve the employee contract and appointment for the city administrator's position between the city of North Platte and M. Lane Grosseth, effective September 7th, 2022.
Second.
I'm going to give Flanders that one. So, okay, motion Garrick, second Flanders. If we have any serious discussion here, we would need to go into an executive session. So if anyone has any questions for Lane, we would need to motion accordingly. If not, we can vote. Does anyone have any questions that we would need to enter an executive session?
Mine's not really serious. I just got one email on this subject, and it was, "We want Lane," 3 times. So I don't know what that means, but that's what I saw.
Anyone else? Calling the question on item number 21. Item number 21 is passed. I need a piece of electrical tape. All right. I'm just kidding. Okay, congratulations, Lane. Number 22, approve the appointment of the law office of Brulliette, Dugan, Trzynski, Bellew, appointing Bill Trzynski, attorney at law, as the contracted city attorney for the city of North Platte, effective October 6th, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the appointment of the law office of Brulliette, Dugan, Trzynski, and Bellew, appointing Bill Trzynski, attorney at law, as the contracted city attorney for the city of North Platte, effective October 6th, 2022.
Second.
Motion Lucas, second Garrick. Any discussion on item number 22? Calling the question on item number 22. Item number 22 is passed. Now we have a public hearing to consider action on ordinance number 4100, vacating a 16-foot alley between 1218 North Ash Street and 505 Rodeo Road, running east and west from Ash, and a request to vacate a 12-foot alley on the west side of 1218 North Ash Street, running north and south, and retaining 16-foot utility easement and a 12-foot utility easement in place of the alleys. Lane, would you read the ordinance, please?
I'll probably butcher some of these words in here, but ordinance number 4100, an ordinance of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, vacating a 16-foot alley located between 1218 North Ash Street and 505 Rodeo Road, running east and west from Ash, and vacating a 12-foot alley located on the west side of 1218 North Ash Street, running north and south. More particularly, the alley on the south side of Lot 3, McEachran's Subdivision, North Platte, Nebraska, and the north side of Zeller Second Administrative Subdivision, North Platte, Nebraska, and the alley on the west side of Lots 1 to 3, McEachran's Subdivision, North Platte, Nebraska, and the east side of Lot 2, Block 12, ED May replat, North Platte, Nebraska, and retaining utility easements in place of the alleys, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you. Okay, we have a public hearing on this item, ordinance number 4100. Is there anyone that wishes to speak about ordinance number 4100? Anyone in the conference room who wishes to speak about item number 4100? We usually don't have anybody on alley vacations, but just in case. Judy, anybody coming down the hall down there? No. Okay.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion Garrick, second Reeker. Calling the question and closing the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. Okay, now the council will now consider action on ordinance number 4100 vacating a 16-foot alley between 1218 North Ash Street and 505 Rodeo Road running east and west from Ash, and a request to vacate a 12-foot alley on the west side of 1218 North Ash running north and south and retaining a 16-foot utility easement and a 12-foot utility easement in place of alleys.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 4100 vacating a 16-foot alley between 1218 North Ash Street and 505 Rodeo Road running east and west from Ash, and a request to vacate a 12-foot alley on the west side of 1218 North Ash Street running north and south and retaining a 16-foot utility easement and a 12-foot utility easement in place of the alleys on first reading.
Second.
Motion Bowles, second Lucas. Any discussion on item number 23? These alley vacations are riveting stuff, folks. Come on. Okay, calling the question on item number 23. Item number 23 is passed. Next, we have a public hearing to consider action on a resolution regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, Wilkinson Study Area, as prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants, Inc., and approval of related actions. And we're going to have a public hearing on this before we do anything else. But as we begin the public hearing, if you've been to City Council or watched too many of our city councils, when we have something that is complicated, I like to make sure that we put all the facts on the table. And it would seem as we've discussed, or the information we've been receiving from many of you in the audience and the council, there are perhaps some facts that are not exactly accurate out there. So I want to make sure everybody has the same information before we begin this discussion. So I'm going to have Judy present some stuff. We may ask Mr. Marvin to chime in as well, and possibly Brent, who's hiding out in the hallway there. Thank you, Brent. So, Judy, if you would start with your presentation, please. And all those of you that came to speak, don't worry, you'll have an opportunity to speak. And like I said, if you're in the conference room right now, please make sure you come up this way. And apparently there's an update for us. Don't do it right now. Okay.
Another time.
There we go. Yeah. Okay, Judy, you have the floor.
Okay, I'm going to do a little PowerPoint slideshow here. So this is a plat map, a preliminary master plan. So housing development in this area has been the vision since about 1979. This was a proposal that was done when the property was rezoned to a planned unit development, a PR1. In the dark outline, you can see kind of a dark outline. Some of those have been done. So you notice Hackberry is there, Lynn Court is there. The remaining proposal at the time was set up in this fashion. Whoops.
Use the left arrow. There you go.
So there were some things that were going around that said, your property values are going to be affected. It will lower your property values. So here's the question. Will my property value be reduced because of a blight and substandard designation? Again, in this information that a lot of you in the public were handed out, it says that it would affect your property values to be determined blighted and substandard. This, in fact, is one of the recent blighted and substandard areas. This is a development by Dixie that was blighted and substandard. As you can see by this, I've highlighted in red some of the properties near or adjacent to these blighted and substandard area. Off to the side on the right, you can see that the property values actually increased. And just to make sure that we did it all around the subdivision, so there's two on this side, you can see property values increased. One on the north, you can see property values increased. Another one on the north, property values increased. Same thing on the east side of the property, property values increased. And another one on the east side of the property, property values increased.
Hey, Judy, go back a slide real quick, would you? So we look at this stuff all the time, but the folks in the audience may not look at these pictures all the time. So for those of you that are not used to looking at it, if you look down the right side of this image, you'll see a whole bunch of numbers kind of in the middle where it says 2021, 2022. Well, it did a second ago. There we go. Okay. And then you'll see the total evaluation. That's the tax evaluation clear to the right in the column. And 2017 is at the bottom of that box kind of in the middle there. And in this particular property, its valuation was $139,685, if my bifocals aren't lying to me here. And then here we are in the 2021 tax evaluation, and we're up to $141,500. And that's a relatively small change, of course, but they do bounce around a little bit, so.
It stayed the same. So
Stayed the
the
same.
example here is showing that it either stays the same or it goes higher. It does not reduce the value of your property. Here's another one. This is out on West A and Lakeview. This is another recent project that was an area that was declared blighted and substandard. This one, of course, is a large development, and it is owned by one property owner, so it has a very high value. Here's another one that also increased in value. It looks like about 10,000. And then another one again that also increased in value in that general area that was declared blighted and substandard. There was some comment made behind a blight and substandard study and where we cherry pick the properties, for lack of a better word. This is a map of the current areas in the city of North Platte that are considered blighted and substandard. The areas in yellow are blighted and substandard, formally designated as blighted and substandard. And the areas in orange are those areas that possibly could be just determined based on some of the things that are going on in those areas. But this is to show you that, yes, blight studies do actually try to find a study boundary that is going to be the smallest area possible to meet the state criteria so that it doesn't impact your allowable 35% of the entire city. So that's where, when you're cherry picking and you're just picking a certain area, that is what you're doing. You're trying to find the smallest boundary that you can do to meet the criteria of state statute.
Thank you. So, Mr. Marvin, I have a question for you there. So for those of you that don't know Mr. Marvin, he develops these sorts of studies and does planning for cities and villages all across the state. Is that correct, Mr. Marvin?
That's correct.
Okay. And in general, how many of these studies do you do in a year, typical year?
Typically, it's been in the past 5, 6, but in the last year or two with everything going on, it's probably up closer to 20 in the last year, year and a half.
Okay.
A lot of that has been driven by the cost of housing and land in a lot of the communities that I deal with. It's just become impossible to develop land and residential development without the use of TIF across the state of Nebraska.
So, just out of curiosity, since you mentioned that, how many other communities would you say at this point, are using a process similar to this or incentivizing housing development in some form?
I can, top of my head, at least 5, and they're all similar in size to you, or a little bit larger than that. Grand Island's using it significantly. Hastings has been using it. The town I live in, David City, is using it. Norfolk and Columbus has been using it. So these are communities that have needed to incentivize housing. In Grand Island, for specific, their housing needs are similar to yours, but a little bit more. The mayor, who as a council member used to vote no against any residential blight study or TIF, because one of his clients was the GI Public School District, has said recently, as he broke a tie on a blight study, that he just doesn't see, if they're going to build the houses they need to build, that they're not going to be able to do it without the use of TIF in Grand Island. It's just going to be impossible.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Marvin while he's up here?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
I've received a number of contacts, and a common theme was, well, why'd you pick these particular houses? Why such a small tract? And, you know, it's not fair that my house got picked, you know, within this tract. Would you just address, from your perspective as an outsider, that concern that people have?
Okay. There are a number of things that we can look at as we look at a blight study. One of the ones that's common in a lot of communities, but wasn't done on this one, is actually the condition of the structure. Because the condition of the structures in this area are fine. What we did, as Judy used the term cherry-picked, is openly we found an area that gave us what we needed for an average age of 40 years of age, which is required by statute in order to declare it as blighted and substandard. That is and we also looked at from the standpoint of the infrastructure in that area and the condition of it. So their houses are being used purely for the fact that they're 40 years of age or more. That's it. That's the only blighting criteria that fits their houses at this point in time. And as Judy said, we do as small an area as possible so we don't impact your percentage, because you're limited to 35% of the community.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Marvin while he's up here? Thank you. We reserve the right to call you back.
Okay.
Okay. I think it would probably, what's that? Okay, we have about 7 minutes before we have to start on our other public hearing. So, Clarine, can you talk for a few minutes about what you're thinking here as part of the development, or whomever would like to represent?
Bill's going to talk a little bit about the history of the development.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm Gil Wilkinson, 1401 Leota Place. Been here a long time, and I started this subdivision in 1977 when I was 36 years old, and I'm now 80, and it's still half done. We still have the 22 acres sitting there that just hasn't been able to develop for us over that period of time. But it's time now. You know, the city, the chamber, everybody's preaching housing and workforce housing. And if we can get this area blighted, we will apply for TIF and try to help us pay for all the infrastructures out there that need to be. And it's substantial, and then we can keep the prices of the lots down. We're not going to be able to compete with the city and the chamber in that collaboration, because they're really going to almost give them away, but that's what we need. I'm glad they are. But we can still develop some affordable lots for the work people in North Platte, and we can't do it. We're not going to do it without this being blighted and then eventually TIF'd if we go ahead with that. So.
Thank you. This moment, sir.
What?
Go ahead. There was somebody raising her hand in the back, so.
Oh, you can call on them if you need.
No, that's okay. Go ahead,
Okay.
Clarine. We're still in the informational phase here. We'll enter the public hearing in a second. So.
Clary Nykoff, Wilkinson Properties, Wilkinson Development, Chief of Operations. Gilbert Wilkinson is Fat Dog's boss, and we of course have Fat Dog in the room too, CEO of Wilkinson Development.
Clarine, would you make sure that microphone's in front of your mouth there so people can hear? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Now I'm drawing a blank. I think Judy had on the screen earlier the master plan of the subdivision. Did you guys see that? We actually have another one that we brought along. There's been a little bit of people thinking that we're trying to go ahead with something that's kind of predetermined. And these are all designs that came out of, like Gil said, the 70s, maybe even 15, 20 years ago. This one isn't dated, so we don't really know what the date of this one is. This one's a little bit different than what Judy showed on the screen. This actually has 4 additional cul-de-sacs that have been developed alongside Lynn Court to kind of mock the same as what Lynn Court is now or is today. And if you're familiar with Lynn Court, it actually has a multifamily unit at the end of the cul-de-sac and then single-family housing on both sides. Because it is a PR1 development, there is the potential that there can be multifamily housing in this development. We may or may not implement that and put that into this. If that were the case, those 2 parcels at the end of each cul-de-sac would potentially probably be multifamily housing. But this is, all, like I said, all these designs come out of the 70s, 80s, 90s when they were doing it back then. Both Gil and Mark really have not developed housing for 30 years. Mark's developed housing not just in North Platte, but in other states.
Clarine, microphone, please.
They're both very familiar with housing developments. We feel like it's the right time and the right place, and we have the right people in place to make this happen. I know all of you have heard that phrase before when Sustainable Beef was in front of you with that same application asking for TIF and to get their industry off the ground. We're here to support that industry. We're also here to support the 274 employees that we also have working for us, Wilkinson companies. We employ everybody from Sydney to Lincoln. 75% of our employees live and breathe in North Platte. And we are growing. We're currently developing 3 truck stops in the state of Nebraska, in Lincoln, Grand Island, and Lexington. We've purchased other property with potential to also add additional sites. We own hotels, we own Fat Dogs gas stations, Time Savers, and real estate property. And Mark and Gil are very good at what they do, and they know that you guys have all seen what they do. For example, Riverside Plaza south of Walmart is theirs, the strip center north of Walmart, and then Baumgart's parking lot, we have a strip center, and there's a lot of other ones. Mark could probably just run through them all in his head. We pay close to $1 million in real estate taxes every year for the state of Nebraska, and a bulk of that is in Lincoln County. So I'm just here to ask you guys to go through with Blight and Substandard to approve this tonight, get us to the next step so that we can ask for TIF on this. Like Gil said, we're not going to be able to do this without TIF. The way this is designed, I've counted it multiple different times on multiple different designs, but anywhere to 50 to 60 houses is what we're anticipating. That may or may not be with multifamily. I've lost track. Really, we are in the infancy of our design. We have not hired any engineers on this. And like I said, we're not going to put any more money at this unless it's blighted and substandard. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Thank
Sorry,
you,
I can talk
Clarine.
pretty-
Nope, you did fine. I've got to cut you off, though. It's time to
Okay.
begin our other public hearing, so
Thank you.
thank you. If someone in the council would motion a recess.
Mr. Mayor, I motion we recess. for the budget
Second.
hearing.
Thank you. Motion to recess for the budget hearing, and a second from motion Reeker, second Vols, calling the question on recess. Okay, the originally scheduled council meeting is now in recess. We will move to item number 26 in your books, or at the very end of your packet. Yep, yep. And
This one now, right?
our newly appointed city administrator reminded me to remind all of you that we will go back to the public hearing once this budget public hearing concludes. So if you're waiting to speak, please don't leave. This probably will only take 20 to 30 minutes. Thank you. Okay. We will now begin agenda of the special North Platte City Council meeting Tuesday, September 6th, 2022, beginning at 6:30 p.m. here in the City Hall Council Chambers. Calling the meeting officially to order. Angie, if you would roll call, please.
Nestle. Here. Tryon. Here. Bowles.
Here.
Lucas.
Here.
Carey. Here. Flanders.
Here.
Reeker.
Here.
Woods.
A current copy of the Open Meetings Act of the State of Nebraska is posted on the wall at the back of the council chambers. No formal vote or action will be taken at this meeting. This is a public hearing. And we will open, yeah, I got you, okay. Public hearing, ordinance number 4106, to adopt the budget statement and to appropriate city monies for fiscal year 2022 through 2023. Lane, would you read the ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 4106, an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of North Platte, Lincoln County, Nebraska, to adopt the budget statement to be termed the annual appropriation bill, to appropriate sum for necessary expenses and liabilities, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing for the effective date and publication thereof.
Thank you. Okay, this is a public hearing on the North Platte City Budget 2022-2023, and we have some information from Mordongo. There she is. Okay, Dawn, would you come up and enlighten us a little bit on your presentation, please? Or is Lane going to do it? I forget. It's a collaboration, right? Okay,
It
that's
is.
good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Kelleher, members of the City Council, and Mr. Groseth. In accordance with LB 148, passed by the Nebraska Legislature in 2020, we are holding tonight's budget hearing separately from any regularly scheduled meeting. We have 3 copies of the city's 2022-2023 budget available for the public, and we are providing this presentation outlining key provisions of the proposed budget. Okay. The key budget provisions of the 2022-2023 budget include, first of all, establishing a general fund cash reserve, which is a continuation of the cash reserve that was first established with our current 21-22 budget. And number 2, proposing a salary schedule that incorporates a comparability adjustment and cost of living adjustment in 2 parts of 1.5% October 1st and 1.5% on June 1st, 2023. For item number 1, a general fund cash reserve of $7,466,058 is reflected in the budget. This amount reflects approximately 21.6% of the budgeted general fund expenditures of $34,617,492. Auditors have previously recommended the establishment of a general fund cash reserve, And thanks to the direction of the City Council, administration, and the diligence of city departments to control expenditures, we are pleased to present a budget which includes a cash reserve that represents approximately 2.6 months of general fund operating expenditures. Auditors have recommended 4 months for the city, so we will continue to work to increase the cash reserve through future budget processes. And then the second key budget provision is that this budget proposes a salary schedule that has been adjusted to maintain comparability as required by state law. In addition to a two-part cost of living adjustment of 1.5%, which would be effective October 1st, and an additional 1.5%, which would be effective June 1st, 2023 for all city employees. This slide provides a graphical representation of the budgeted revenues for the general fund in the total amount of $42,083,550. This exceeds the 2022 budget total of $36.1 million by approximately $6 million. The pie chart illustrates the proportion of the total that each of the various revenue categories comprise. As you can see, sales tax makes up $9.3 million, or 22.18% of the general fund revenues. And you will also notice on this slide that the general fund cash reserves also makes up approximately 20.1%, which is part of the reason for the revenues increasing year over year. As far as the detail to this slide, if you're interested, can be found on page 18 of the city's budget that is being proposed. This slide provides a breakdown of the 2023 budgeted general fund expenditures, totaling $34.6 million by department. This amount exceeds 2022's budgeted expenditures of $32.8 million by approximately $1.8 million. This slide illustrates that the budgets of the city's 3 largest departments, which are police, fire, and public service, make up 3/4 or 75.4% of the city's general fund. And there is a summary containing both the 2022 and 2023 budgeted expenditures on page 24 of the budget notebook. This slide compares the city's total 22-23 budget with that of 21-22 by fund type. The total expenditures shown on the darkened line reflect an increase of $43.8 million or 32.85% from 2022 to 2023's budgets. Most of this change is in the utilities and assessment funds areas, since the city budgets to spend everything in all funds besides the general fund. This increase is partly because of an improved cash position in the utilities funds and approximately $20 million in the assessment funds for funding expected from the state for Sustainable Beef's wastewater treatment. This slide on page 6 here compares the city's proposed mill levy with the current 21-22 levy. The total levy being proposed reflects a decrease of 3.2 cents or 0.32 cents per $100 of valuation. Although the city's total tax asking increased by $485,000, the mill levy decreased because of the city's valuation increasing from $1.6 trillion to $1.7 trillion, by $122,476,677, or 7.56%. This slide provides a history of the city's mill levy, and also provides the levy that is being proposed for 22-23 of 43.898 cents per $100 of valuation. And it compares that to the levies of the previous 9 years. In reviewing levies back to 2004 and 2005, the levy being proposed for 2022-2023 is the lowest in that time frame. The budget that has been published and being presented this evening reflects an additional 1% increase to the city's restricted funds authority above the annual base limitation increase of 2.5%. As a reminder, a list of the major revenues that are considered restricted funds are listed on the right-hand side of this slide, to include sales tax, property tax, motor vehicle, and so on. We have included an item on the September 8th special city council meeting agenda requesting your approval of the additional 1% increase in the city's allowable growth, which requires approval by 75% of city council. Last year, city council approved the additional 1%, which we believe is especially important given recent economic development activity and the potential for increased restricted fund revenues. Thank you for your time and attention this evening and for your efforts and interest relative to the city's budget process. And at this time, would open to any questions.
Dawn, just while you're up there,
Yes.
would you go back one slide, please?
Yes.
This 1% restricted funds is for those of us that don't deal with this every day like you do, is kind of a slightly confusing thing to think about. It's, just correct me if I'm wrong, this is not a tax increase of 1%, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's good. I knew it wasn't, but I just
No,
want to make sure everyone else did
that
too.
is correct.
Okay. Now, I'm going to attempt to explain this, and then you correct me when I'm done, okay?
Okay.
Okay. So this is an allowable spending increase. The state grants municipalities of our size, by default, a 2.5% increase. So it's sort of like accounting for your annual raise at home. You know, you get a little bit more money, okay? And then this is an additional 1%, so it would be 3.5%. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to collect that money.
Right.
It just means that if we do, we would be able to then allocate it to something that would be beneficial to the community and the citizens.
That
Does
is,
not mean that we will. It just means that if we were to collect the money, we would be able to then use it. Because if we didn't do this and we collected the money would just be sitting there in an account doing nothing.
that's right. We would not be able to use it. And yes, this is a restricted funds is a lid on the revenue. So it's actually a lid on what we can collect. And as we all know, the revenues is a critical piece of our budget. So if we don't have the revenue, we can't have the associated expenditures and have a balanced budget.
Okay. Thank you for bearing with my limited
Yes.
explanation there.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for Dawn?
Don, would you share with our listeners and the public present just the last few years of trending with the cash reserves? I think that's something you and the other employees at the city should be extremely proud of what we've accomplished. And it's hard to sort through it in public type accounting. And so if you would just comment about the growth we've had in cash reserves as a city over the last few years.
Yes, as I mentioned, that in our current fiscal year is the first year that we have been able to budget a cash reserve, to my knowledge, in the history of the city. And our budgeted cash reserve was over a little over 3 million for this current year. And it looks like we should exceed that based on our actual results of this year's fiscal results of this year. And so then with that, we are including and projecting approximately 7.6 million for next year's cash reserve. Certainly, we feel that those numbers are conservative. And so with any luck, we may even be in a position to exceed the budgeted cash reserve amount that we're presenting in the budget to you. But at this time, based on conservative estimates, that is where we are projecting it.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just add to that, that when you start to have discussions about making significant lowering of your mill levy, which is all of our goals, being properly reserved is one of the first steps in that, again, in addition to controlling expenses. So I congratulate you guys for your efforts on that.
Yes, there's been a lot of people, everyone, the entire city family has had an influence on that position.
Other question? Oh, Brad?
Don, I know we've been seeing record sales tax this
Yes.
last year,
Yes.
which is awesome. How close to that lid, do you know off the top of your head, we are?
Currently, the city has about 7.5 million of unused restricted funds authority, which doesn't sound extremely close, but there are some exceptions that we are currently allowed to take in the calculation of that number. And so if something would change in the law at any point, there'd be a potential that we'd be a lot closer to not having that authority. So if nothing changes moving forward, it may not be extremely critical today, but with the activity that's happening in our community, we would anticipate growth in various areas, retail sales, valuations and things like that, which are all factors with respect to the restricted funds that fall under that requirement.
Yeah, with the new internet sales and how those are happening,
Right,
it's
right,
helping out
right.
significantly, so thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Don. I think you can sit down, but we reserve the right to call you back. Lane, do you have something to add, or? Okay. Now, this is a public hearing. Does anyone from the public have any questions regarding the budget? Anybody who's in the meeting room wish to comment on the public hearing for the budget?
Move to close the
Hold
public.
on just a second. Dennis, would you look down the hall, see if anybody's coming for me? I'm going to guess probably not, but just in case.
I got all night.
Okay. Well, we've lost Dennis. Okay.
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion Garrick, second Reeker to close the public hearing. Calling the question and closing the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed. As this is the only item on this agenda, this meeting is now adjourned. So we have just adjourned the special North Platte City Council meeting for the purpose of the public hearing, and we would now need someone to motion us out of recess, or we could take a 5-minute break. Yes, sir. Let's take a 5-minute break, everybody. Be back in 5 minutes.
Would be a good idea. I should. I should. Kinda dozed off.
We have the whole council, okay. Okay, everybody, we're back. Now, we are resuming with the public hearing in the original council meeting. And Clarine, I think you had just finished your comments, and we're about to ask if there were questions, is that correct?
Yeah, and I think I thought of one more thing to just add. We are looking at developing this site for lots that we can then sell off to builders and hopefully open it up to whoever wants to build a house. If people want to buy their own lot and build a house, that would be an option. That's our plan right now. We're hoping that we don't have to build the houses ourselves. That wouldn't be totally out of the question, but we're hoping just to develop the site and have it lot ready to build on. And we're anticipating that whole process to get through subdividing it, going through your city process, as well as then applying for TIF, getting all the engineers and putting dollar figures to that, and then being able to develop the site. We might not even be able to see a house going up for a year.
Okay, do we have any questions for Clarine while she's up there?
Yeah, I have a quick question, Clarine.
Lucas?
If this would be approved and then moved to the point of a TIF application, do you project at that time there'd be clarity on how much would be targeted for larger multifamily and how much would be targeted for maybe the like four structure less type facilities and single family? Will that, maybe in other words, will that be clearer at the time of TIF application?
Well, I think you're knowledgeable enough about TIF to know that that has to be the case to get the numbers to factor out and get it all right, to know how much value you're going to be adding to the property, to know the increment, and also to know how much infrastructure is going to be there. Some of that housing takes different infrastructure needs than others. But for the good of the people, yeah, that would be the case, that we would have to meet with engineers to figure that all out.
Okay, no, thank you.
Anyone else question for Clarine? Okay, Clarine, reserve the right to call you back.
Perfect. Please do.
Okay, we'll now continue with the regular public hearing. As I understand, there are several folks who would like to speak and address the council. We're happy that you're here, and we appreciate you coming out to express your opinions. I would ask that you come up and you give us your name and your address, and please keep your comments on subject. If you get much beyond about 5 minutes, I'm going to politely ask you to wrap up your thoughts, and we'll continue from there. If anyone has any questions regarding this, we will jot them down. Lane, would you make a note of any questions that are asked by the audience? And if the developers would like to try to answer those questions after the fact, we'll certainly give them a chance to do that. Sometimes the questions are easy and sometimes they don't know yet, but we'll attempt to record them and try to get the answers on the table in the name of keeping the facts out there. If you are in the conference room down the hall, please make your way up here at some point when I ask if anyone else would like to speak. And I'll give a pause and I'll ask somebody out there to see if anyone is coming when that occurs. I noticed there were 3 or 4 people sitting there when I walked by recently. So, that being said, who would like to speak first? Please approach the mic. Come on up, sir.
Evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Leroy Miller. I reside at 1014 Russian Olive Road here in North Platte. I'm apparently within the constraints of what we're discussing here as far as blighted and substandard. My insurance company won't insure my house for less than $250,000. It's 43 years old, and it's not substandard, especially not after 2 years of heavy-duty remodeling on the inside of it. And it's a nice brick home. It's in a nice area. We've got a nice, quiet neighborhood, and we love it over there. I'm not opposed to development, but what I'm hearing here tonight is a lot of gray area. Like, give us the TIF and give us the substandard and give us your blighted designation for all of these housing areas that we've all worked so hard to maintain and keep up. and to present a nice neighborhood, give us that first, and then we'll tell you what we're going to do with the development. That doesn't work for me. Multifamily housing, I'm not opposed to it. I've had to live it in my life. But I can tell you for certain that people that live in those kind of housing areas are not responsible as much as you have someone who has an investment in their house. They're just not. The one that we have down the street from me in Leote right now, I have a little bit of a problem with a couple, three that live over there racing their cars around the corner. I keep waiting for them to hit one of mine that I have to park on the street. You know, we've got narrow streets over there. We're talking about 50 to 60 homes that we don't know what kind of homes we're going to build, if they're going to end up being low-income homes, or what the accessibility is going to be to these areas. We don't have any information other than go ahead and blight us and substandard us, and we'll build what we want to. And if that happens to pull down your housing values, well, that's just tough. We're already heading into a market crash area with the housing all across this land. That's going to impact us already. So if we have something like this that's just put on us with absolutely nothing concrete set out there as to what we're looking at, as to what's going to be put next to us, with no provisions that have so far been stated as how the increased traffic flow is going to be handled for my little grandsons and my great-grandson, who on occasion runs out in the street, I'm really totally opposed to this going forward without more concrete development that's going to be presented to us as to exactly what kind of neighbors we can expect. There's nothing that's being said about what type of housing we can see put into this area. It's all gray. It's all just, you know, blight my house, substandard it, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to do to you after that. I'm totally opposed to this approach to this situation. I'm not opposed to development. I'm not opposed to it at all. I hope North Platte continues to grow, and I see things going on out there that tells me some of you know something about what's coming that the rest of us don't know. And that's fine, and that's wonderful, and I hope this town grows. I graduated from high school here and back in '67. I've spent my whole life here growing up, moved away, and I moved back here 5.5 years ago because I wanted the atmosphere of a North Platte for my grandkids to grow up in. So I don't know where we're all going, but this ain't the way to get there. I'm sorry. I don't like the way this thing's being presented. We're sitting out here, homeowners, and we're going to take the heat on this thing. That's the way it looks right now. Nothing against the integrity of the developer, but in all honesty, we've got developers that have gone into these blighted areas, and let's face it, they were truly blighted areas, not like the housing we've got. They're truly blighted areas, and yeah, they fixed them up. They used the TIF. They were, had integrity. They did it right, and the area around redeveloped, and it did bring a tax base to the city. Well, guess what? A lot of the property tax base is going to go away with the new system that's coming in through the banking system. Mortgages are going to be tough to get, and then you have people like BlackRock that come in, and they buy up the whole development for more money than the average homeowner can even afford to get a loan for, and you need to ban those people from this town, by the way. But they come in and they buy the whole thing up and they put out high rents. And then you get people, a whole load of people that come into all those houses and they won't take care of them and they won't take care of the property. And guess what happens to everybody's valuation? Guess what's happened in all those areas? It's gone in the toilet. We all lose. That's basically all that I have to say. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next person, please. Next person, please. Come on. Oh, hold on, Gary. Got one ahead of you.
Good evening, Mayor Kelleher. Good evening, City Council. My name is Jennifer Thomas, 1302 Hackberry Road. Thank you to those of you who took time to reach back out to me after I voiced my concerns by text or phone call today. I sincerely appreciate your willingness to listen and for your service on the council. Today I wanted to address the proposal for the TIF funding of the Wilkinson study area in the Russian Olive subdivision, which, props to Mr. Wilkinson, we love our neighborhood out there. The area, though, is far from blighted and substandard. After reviewing the study and the evidentiary photos that were submitted of a bit of standing water in the gutter and a few weeds between sidewalk cracks, then by that I think every single neighborhood in North Platte is blighted and substandard. And if our street is in such disrepair, why doesn't the city take care of it for us? I do worry that this designation would possibly stigmatize our entire neighborhood, even though my house is outside of the study area, and negatively affect our property values. And I do appreciate the slideshow. I couldn't see all of the numbers, but it seems to me that, you know, an increase of $2,000 in a property value since 2017, I think mine has gone up $60,000 in that time. So it seems like maybe it was negatively affected, and the houses in, you know, the study area maybe didn't go up like they should have, like everything else is going up. If this passes, how would it help improve any of the poor conditions that are in our neighborhood that the study calls out? What would the other repercussions be from traffic, increased crime by making Hackberry possibly a through street? Most of us, that's not why we bought our houses there. We kind of like that it kind of dead ends. It's a great, safe neighborhood for our kids. Eugene is hardly equipped for the current traffic, let alone another 50 plus houses out there. I feel that residents would be left bearing an unfair tax burden, and it wouldn't be shared, you know, that money that's needed for our schools. I just don't think this is the way to do it. It looks like there may be some better options. I've seen that other proposal for the Southwest, maybe divesting some of the city land. Maybe that would be a better option where it's not going to negatively possibly impact so many North Platte residents. Seems like that would maybe be a better place to start. And I would say if this project only has upsides, why didn't those in favor, the developers, the city, proactively contact residents with the plan, maybe tell us the advantages, why we should be on board instead of 2 days before the council meeting, us having to find out about it second or third hand, something that does impact us. You know, we've lived in our house for 15 years, and in that time, we have the same next door neighbors, we have the same neighbors across the street, because it is a great neighborhood. And while you may call it blighted and substandard, I call it home.
Thank you. Gary? You've gotten up twice, so I figured I probably better.
Mayor Kelleher, council members, Gary Pearson, President of the North Platte Area Chamber Development Corporation, 2708 Maris Lane. I'd like to congratulate Lane and Bill for their appointments. Terry, thank you and your firm for your service to the community. You know, this past week we had a lot of exciting announcements in the community. It's a culmination of a lot of years of hard work everybody put into those announcements. A lot of potential jobs, investment coming to North Platte. We have wonderful opportunities, but those opportunities won't be fully realized if we don't address housing. This past construction year, we had 6 entire single-family houses permitted in the city of North Platte. That ought to be the number that the villages of Lincoln County are developing, not a city the size of North Platte. I've showed you numerous statistics before how our peer communities over the last 40 years have driven very successfully growth in their communities and population growth, where North Platte has been primarily stagnant. And part of that is we haven't addressed housing issues. The unfortunate reality is all of these wonderful opportunities we have won't happen without housing. And housing in today's world will not happen without assistance towards the infrastructure. Unfortunately, the law determines that areas that qualify for redevelopment unfortunately have to have that stigma of that terminology, substandard and blighted. In 40 years of working economic development, I've never found one person that likes that term. And we've tried numerous times in the legislature to get it changed, but it's in the Constitution, and it's tough to do. So it does take a lot of education for people to understand. I think if you look at the redevelopment areas that North Platte has brought forward in recent years, there's some really nice new developments there. And it wouldn't have happened without TIF. The 3 multifamily apartment complexes, which are getting rave reviews right now. District 177, the mall, Victory Village, Pacific Place, all of them were TIF projects. None of them would have happened without a substandard blighted designation or a redevelopment plan. The Dancers subdivisions, the only subdivision we're seeing right now doing a number of new single-family housing developments, wouldn't have happened without a substandard blighted designation or redevelopment project. You know, the Chamber Development Corporation, you know, going back to 2013, they felt this is a collection of the business community in the town with a collected voice. Just didn't see any speculative housing happen in North Platte, so they had to step forward. Somebody had to do it. They became the entity that tried to be as creative as possible through programs like Shot in the Arm, the Rural Workforce Housing Funds, the Mulligan Meadows, and we made a commitment that we're going to support housing. Any type of housing that comes is done by responsible developers. The Wilkinsons have proven for better than 2 generations that they've made good things happen in North Platte. They believe in North Platte, and I trust them to do the right thing and to bring the right kind of development here, and I've seen evidence of that. I worked with them prior to the time I even moved to North Platte, and they're classy developers, and they do it the right way. You know, I've shown you statistics where our peer communities are doing 30, 40, and 50 TIF projects over the last few years, and North Platte's done 7. They're growing. We haven't been, but we have the opportunity now, and it simply will not happen without housing. So you can always count on the Chamber and Development Corporation to support our housing developers, especially when they're local. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, please.
Hi, I'm Jessica Formansky, 1320 Hackberry Road. And I just wanted to make some comments regarding the blighted and substandard study. I understand what you're saying about, you know, I appreciated the presentation, but I still think it's a misleading report and study. I think that the pictures that were shown are not, they're false. We don't have potholes in our neighborhood. It's not unsafe and unsanitary. We walk our dogs on those sidewalks. They're much the same as any neighborhood in North Platte. And so reading that report was really disheartening to think that that could happen in any neighborhood in North Platte. And I guess now I have a question, and maybe Mr. Voles, you could answer that, regarding insurance and our homes, and how does that affect my insurance rate? Can I still insure my home? Will I get the same rate that I'm getting right now? If the area that I'm living in is so unsanitary and unsafe and is considered blighted and substandard?
Yeah, I would insure every home out there. It's not the designated area, because I don't know just because I'm on city council I know, but the lay person, the normal person doesn't know. Any other insurance agent doesn't know. You look at each individual property, and if you were an attractive nuisance, I wouldn't insure your home, but every home out there none of them were attractive nuisances. So they're kept very well. It wouldn't have any effect whatsoever on your rates.
Okay. And I also wanted to make a comment about the increased property values that we saw in the presentation. Those were extremely minimal. I mean, as Jennifer pointed out, our property values have increased much more than that, and I don't think that anybody could say conclusively that those wouldn't have increased anyhow, or potentially even more, if the designation wasn't blighted and substandard. Correct? I wanted to comment a little bit, or maybe receive some feedback about the traffic out in our area. Currently, we have fat dogs which is a truck stop at the end where we can enter into our properties. It's a problem. It's unsafe. Eugene cannot handle any more additional traffic. There are no sidewalks on Eugene. We can't link up to the trails without taking Willow all the way to State Farm and around. We can't just walk down Eugene. It's unsafe. It's not wide enough, and it's barely safe enough for 2 vehicles. And what's the solution there? Are we going to be paying to widen that street next as property tax or owners out in that area?
You wouldn't have to pay to widen the street unless you lived on it.
Well, it's still going to be an issue. The traffic, regardless, is still going to be an issue. So has there been any concern or talk about that? How we're going to accommodate 50 to 60 additional families? Potentially even multifamily units?
Eugene's been looked at quite some time as far as needing widening, and it's a county, city issue, so it's not something that we're not aware of as far as that goes. And I think it's been in our 1 and 6 year plan for a while as far as that. Just no action's been taken recently on that.
Okay. In addition to what I hope are stick-built homes that would potentially be built out there, is that something that we're talking about, or is that a zoning issue for later time?
We're just trying to develop lots. That was our presentation, so we're trying to sell the lots to builders.
Okay.
And they would be stick-built homes.
Affordable lots.
Okay, so affordable homes, stick-built homes that probably are going to cost $225 to $300-ish.
At least.
At least, okay. So then, do you see that people that are paying $225,000 to $300,000 for homes want to live that close to the interstate and be with a multifamily home at the end of your cul-de-sac? I think that's a consideration.
That's a risk we take as a developer.
And Lynn Court, it would be the exact same way.
Right. And not all of those homes are stick-built. So, all right, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Lori Hepperly, 814 Hackberry Road. My house is not in the blighted standard thing that is being talked about, but I've lived in my house for 30-some years plus. I'm not against seeing the development out there. I think the traffic situation is questionable with Eugene, fat dogs up there. You sit at the traffic light and run by the state. I've talked to them about it. Trying to get out of the area is a nightmare. It's a Wade stoplight. I think it would be really bad if you had extra homes out there. I'm totally against multifamily homes out there. I kind of have a burr underneath my saddle because I moved into Hackberry and there wasn't any homes out at the end, and ended up having to pay for Oak Street being paved into that subdivision. That really got to me. If I would have known I had to pay for that cement road on Oak Street going into the subdivision, I wouldn't ever bought there. I kind of feel that that should have been up to the developer, which is the developer that's wanting to develop now. And so I have questions on my mind what that would turn out to. I'm afraid if the blighted area goes in, just like the first gentleman, you're putting the cart before the horse. Well, we'll do the TIF thing, and then we'll let you know if we're going to do multi-dwellings or what we're going to do later. I like where I live, but I really think it would become issues with traffic. Our streets are super narrow. That's why half the people have to park on the sidewalks. I've been ticketed by the police for that, but if you don't, it's a one-lane street. So it's about all I've, taken into consideration, everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
Hello, my name is Jessica Braithwaite. I live at 1321 Hackberry Road. And I just want to echo for those of you who I contacted and you contacted me back. I thank you very much for the conversations. And if I didn't contact you, I was going to, but I was running kids around a million places. So I'm just glad I'm here. So I am all for the progress of North Platte, just like many of the previous people before me said. I moved here 15 years ago. Yes, but even before that, 20 years ago, I went to Mid-Plains College. So I was there, and then we went to Kearney, and then we came back. So I am a big North Platte supporter for sure, and I love all the progress that's happening in our town. I just do feel like the development in our area is just not the right place. Again, I'm going to echo many of the things that people have already said. Eugene, I know that it's been on the 1 to 6 year plan that you may have said, but I've lived in my house for 7 years, and that hasn't been accomplished. It may be the most narrow street in all of North Platte. It has zero shoulder. We have to, our kids aren't allowed at all walking, biking, anything on that road or down the roads like by Fat Dogs and that kind of thing. There's just way too much traffic, and that's with our community being a dead-end community, so with 50 more homes or families, I just can't imagine the traffic that it would for kids to have to be around, let alone kids on walking or bikes or people in cars. I watch many of your meetings online. I have never been, so I do appreciate everything that you're doing. Like I said, I am all for the progress of North Platte. I do appreciate also all your technicalities in this meeting. You guys go by the book, you go by the laws, you follow different things exactly as they should be followed. And I guess that's what I'm asking you for this vote. I know that blighted and substandard, as people have said before, they kind of aren't understood, I guess, by us who aren't educated in those terms. But I feel like they have a specific definition. That's why they are being named blighted or substandard. You look at the definition of blighted and substandard, and it's dangerous, unsafe, a decline in productivity due to depreciation, abandoned buildings, environmental contamination. That's the definition of those words. And again, I appreciate you guys following all the technicalities that you do in this meeting, but then you have to then formally vote that way if you're going to vote for those words to define the community and neighborhood that we live in. It can't be farther from the truth from that. As many people have said, we bought our homes, and we've added on to our homes and made our homes go up in value for ourselves. And them being blighted and substandard is just not the definition of those. It's not our place to change the meaning of the words and the laws to fit our own agendas. When these laws were made, these words were used on purpose to prevent developers to build on lands that aren't good for the neighborhoods being affected. There are other areas of North Platte that can be developed. The reason that the laws were made were so that when true, authentic, blighted, and substandard areas need help, then that's when the city can come in and help them. I asked my husband if I should come to this meeting, and he said no. He said that all of you had already made up your minds on what you were going to vote, and that my voice or other people's voices wouldn't make a difference. So I love nothing more than proving him wrong. So please help me in doing that and just listening to the concerns of other people and just listening to the vocabulary that's taken place that, as they've said, those words are in our Constitution, in our legislature, and they've stuck in the legislature for a reason. So just take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
Hi, I'm Reagan Skillstad. I live at 1311 Hackberry Road. I didn't prepare anything because I wasn't expecting to talk. However, after being here, I just want to reiterate a couple of things. I think the gentleman beside me, my neighbor and my friend, said there's so much gray area. I talked to some of you, right? I was on the phone for a long time. And I talked to Mr. Wilkinson, who was great, answered all my questions, and put my mind at ease at some things. But the problem is that there's no transparency. We don't know what you're agreeing to. If we had been able to see a plan that was laid out, that we could see exactly what was going to be built, we'd be so much more comfortable. The lack of transparency has led to a lack of trust. And it's not that we don't want to trust. We do. We believe in our community. It's idyllic. How many of you have been down Hackberry Road? Yeah, it's narrow. But our neighborhood is a community. We take care of one another. We have strong ties. We watch each other's kids. It's a great place to live. Mark and I built our house 28 years ago, so it's not over 40 years old. Eugene has never been talked about in that time or fixed in that time. That's not it. What we want to see is what you're allowing other people. Growth. We want growth. We're excited about the mall. We're excited about things that are changing and bringing our town into become a better. But you had clear plans on what you knew was happening. Do you understand our confusion? So what I'm saying is, develop, sure. But without transparency, you have not allowed us to trust. And that's important. Wouldn't you agree? In a small community like ours? I don't know if there's a way to table it till plans have been laid out. We're fearful of what could be put back there, going in blind. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next. Who else would like to speak? Anyone in the, oh, here we go.
Good evening. My name is Shane Kane, live at 1117 Hackberry Road. I am one of the 26 structures that are in the study area, and my house is one of the 2 structures that are less than 40 years old. It was my understanding earlier, as I thought I'd listen to the gentleman from Marvin Associates, if I'm saying that correctly. I thought he made a comment that these homes were specifically chosen because they're over 40 years of age. Well, my house isn't, but yet it was selected in this study. So I have concerns about this. I looked at the study. I see a lot of mays and coulds in there. Well, there's a lot of mays and coulds all the time. So nothing really concrete in this, in my opinion. Again, they used the word cherry picking before. Yeah, it's a cherry picked. Infrastructure in and out of that area hasn't been talked about at all. Everyone else here has mentioned it. Eugene's a mess, Hackberry's narrow, you're gonna add 50 structures. Your only way out right now is at Oak and Eugene, or to take the gravel road down Russian and up to Willow. So I think we got the cart before the horse here. There are other considerations that need to be taken place before we sit here and just slap blight on this space, this acreage. Everyone else has done a good job speaking tonight. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Brandon Jones, 2115 Birchwood Road. I'm also the current chairman of the Chamber Board of Directors. Gary did a pretty good presentation a little bit ago of what's coming to town. We've had several meetings in the last year where we spent 50 minutes of an hour-long meeting talking about housing. It has to happen. Before you, I believe, is just a blight study. It's not saying what's going to be done. All it is determining the area is ready for development, which you have a tool that the state says is this is how you do it. They went through that first step. You have a piece of property that a private developer is willing to put forth and do some development on to help with housing. They've sat on the property since at least before 1979, it sounds like, with no tax base coming in off of it besides empty lots. I guess in my opinion, it's time that that lot be developed and generate revenue for the community as well as add housing to our community. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? Anyone in the conference room? Nope, everyone left? I'm getting head shaking back there. Oh, here we go. Okay.
Victor Kramer, 1014 Hackberry Road. I think everybody's done a great job and touched base on major concerns. For me, I think it would be the infrastructure. It's not there. Like, is the city willing to fix the things that need fixed? Eugene, the intersection at Fat Dogs, those are all problems. That intersection should have been fixed when Fat Dogs was put in. I don't know who dropped the ball on that. I know some of you probably weren't here, but I think that was a major ball drop on the city's part. Or I think we all know that there needs to be more housing. That's not the problem. It's what everybody else has said. It's a huge gray area. Show us what's going to be there. Show us a plan. You know, we don't want this done like Hackberry was. We know you're not going to come in and fix Hackberry. Hackberry is very narrow. There's the easement's there. My property line is 10 foot in my front yard. So why wasn't that done right to start with? You know, I don't know if that was the city, that was the developer at the time, but that ball got dropped then too. Are we going to continue to do that in that area? I think that's why everybody has concerns, because it has been dropped. I don't know if I got much else. That's everybody's done a good job of presenting. As far as infrastructure, you know, is the electrical in place to do all these things? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The power's out about once a month out there now. I mean, how are you going to add another 60 homes to the area? How much money is the city going to put forward to fix these issues in that area? I think you guys need to ask yourselves that question. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
I'm Jared Childers, 1220 Hilltop Circle, North Platte. Wanted to come up here today. I think there's some great points being made today about some of the infrastructure out there. There definitely is needs, and we need to do that. We need to look at that, and I appreciate the comments on that. But tonight we're talking about something that involves that property. The designation is to get blighted in substandard, to be able to make a TIF application that has to be defined, that has to go through what goes into that property, what type of structures, values, things like that to make the TIF. And I am supportive of that because North Platte needs housing. We need it badly. Right now, we do not have enough houses for the number of people coming, and quite frankly, as a comment earlier, you could probably blight and substandard most of North Platte. We have a lot of things we have to do in this town, and we have to start figuring out how to do it rather than how not to do it. And I ask for your support for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to? Oh, here we go. Okay, sorry.
Good evening. Carla Downey. I live at 914 Hackberry. We bought our house in 2004. I was pregnant with our youngest daughter. We have raised two of the most amazing individuals in that neighborhood. We love our neighborhood, and as many have said, it's an awesome place to live. It's a great place to raise your family. And we're certainly not against growing North Platte. I'm born and raised in North Platte, okay, so I have a lot of history with North Platte. But I want you to hear what we're saying, that these homes we have invested our lives into, we've invested our money into. My husband and I own a business in this town, so we've invested money not only as homeowners, but also as business owners in this town. We have no problem with growing the town, and we know that there needs to be housing. But what we're saying to you, and we're hoping you're understanding, is that these homes are safe havens. At the end of the day, we come home, and we're a family inside this safe haven. And in reading through the study, what I got was that they couldn't find anything wrong with our homes. Our homes are fabulous out there. We all take very good care of our homes, okay? What they found issue with was what belongs to all of you, which is the cities, the alleys. I have yet to see a residential area that has paved alleys. We don't have paved alleys out there. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'd rather not pay for that. Okay, talked about the gutters and about the water standing. That's not on us, the homeowners. That's not on us. But when you say that you want to make our home area, and our home is not in the study. We live across the street from it though, okay? But when you come in and you say you want to make our homes blighted and substandard, what we're hearing is that what we've taken care of for, our youngest is 17 years old, okay? So what we've taken care of for 18 years isn't good enough. Except that's not the case, because it's not our homes that are the problem out there. It's the streets and the gutters and et cetera, et cetera. So what you're wanting to do, it appears, it seems to us, is to penalize us because, well, you live in a substandard area, so we need to penalize you and call it as such. But it's really not as such. Our homes are beautiful places. Our neighborhood is fabulous. You should move out there sometime. But I have one more question, and I don't need an answer. Maybe this is rhetorical, but the area where the land is that wants to be developed, okay, there were only 3 homes adjacent to that land that were used for the study. Those homes are all too young for the study. They wouldn't have passed the study. So the homes that were used were the homes that are down on our end, which are 40 years and older. So I'm trying to understand why you would use the homes that are farther from the actual piece of property instead of using the homes that butt up right against said property. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Hi, good evening. My name is Scott Baker, 914 Russian Olive. My only question is, I'm not going to reiterate what everyone else said, but my question is, have you guys looked at Victoria Lane? I know there's one house out there, and that's got everything, looks like it's out there, so I don't know if the council or the city's looked at Victoria Lane. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak? We don't have anybody in the conference room, right? No one else would like to speak? We would need to close.
Make a motion to close public hearing.
Motion Vols, second Garrick, to close the public hearing. Calling the question on closing the public hearing. Public hearing is closed. How many questions did you end up with over there, Lane?
I have 11 questions, many of them were said more than once.
Okay.
I have some questions that I wrote down. Do you want me to address those, or I know that's not public hearing anymore?
Yeah, hold on just a second, Clarine. We'll give you a chance here. Council, do you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion so far?
Go ahead, Ty.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion. I move to adopt resolution as presented in council materials regarding the City of North Platte, Nebraska Blight and Substandard Study, Wilkinson Study Area as prepared by Marvin Planning Consultants, Inc., and approval of related actions.
Second.
Motion Lucas, second Garrick. Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker?
when I got this information, I took it upon myself to go out and drive the neighborhood and talk with some of the neighbors, and they spoke with me, and it was a good discussion. I got to meet some really good people. Because there was note made in the report of substandard streets, I made a pretty determined effort to investigate that, and I never found anything in the street at all that would cause me any concern. It's an asphalt street. I never saw any potholes anywhere. There were, as in the pictures here, a couple of spots where there was some water in the drive-over curb. But as far as the streets being deteriorated, I didn't see any of that. The people that I spoke with did have a great deal of concern about traffic. What are they going to do with traffic? And when I looked at the picture on Google Earth, it appears to me that if we get into an emergency situation out there, it's going to be pretty difficult to evacuate that area because there's only two ways out. And I don't know how you're going to get fire trucks in there and people out at the same time. And so anyway, just my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Vols?
Thank you. You guys did an excellent job presenting your side of this, I'm going to call it a dilemma. Lane, you wrote down 11 questions. I lumped mine into the same, and maybe I was selectively hearing, but I hear a lot of ingress, egress, Eugene, and I'm going to set aside wants a plan for just a second, but I wanted to talk about ingress, egress, Eugene, and infrastructure down there, and the S-turns around Fat Dogs. I stopped down to Lane's office last week because I had those same exact questions. We jawed off the top of our heads. That is an issue down there. If this happens down there, it has to be addressed. It really does. Knowing, I look back on Dixie about 6 months ago when we were doing a 1 and 6 year road plan, and folks on Dixie Street that goes in between Phillip and A Street on the west side of town, they wanted action to happen. the mayor did a phenomenal job, brought a public hearing with the residents on Dixie. He is, if you want a guy who's going to do the right thing, the mayor and this council, I firmly believe, will ascertain that the right thing is done. And you weren't the city manager, or you were the interim city manager at the time, and you facilitated the meeting. So with Brett Berglund, our city engineer, it was great to see positive things happen there. And Jared made a great point, Jared Childers. We need to figure out a way how to do it and how not to do it. This is good progress going on, and it could really make that area more attractive and bring more communities and neighbors to your area that you guys enjoy so much. And it can be an even nicer neighborhood. Not that yours is beautiful, it really is, and to a person, you all said that. But I think with the right planning and the right people doing this, the major pro I have written down is we kind of know the developer and we know what these guys are willing to do. Right now, Mr. Wilkinson could sell that plot of ground and we could have someone come in here that we don't know what's going to happen there. The last thing I wanted to touch on, and Mrs. Skillstat, you were great. You just were, yep. The last thing I wanted to talk on was the transparency and having a plan. And I don't know who the right person is to talk about this, but this is, unfortunately, it's a big step, but it's one step in a process. Could somebody smarter than myself go up and tell us how this whole thing would come to fruition if it were to come to fruition? I think that's you, Judy.
Sorry, Judy, you get this one.
Mayor, Councilman. Okay, so this is just the very, very first step in a TIF process or blighted and substandard process. Redevelopment process is what we typically use as the name. So the first thing is to get the property blighted and substandard. That's drawn out in state statute. There's a process of doing that. There's notifications put in the Telegraph so people are aware of the meetings when they occur. At that time, there's a lot of people in the audience saying, we don't know what they're going to do. And they are 100% correct. We know that they want to look at housing. They want to look at putting housing in there. The property is zoned as residential, single-family residential. It is appropriately zoned as a PR1, which does give them a little bit of flexibility when it comes to residential structures. It is not zoned for low-income housing. It is not zoned for mobile homes, anything like that. So you're right. We don't know how the streets are going to lay out at this moment. Clarine, I believe, was up here, and she stated that they didn't want to put any money into the project until they knew that they had a possible project. This isn't going to happen without TIF. The only way they know that they can move forward is if they do the blight and substandard study first. That is state statute. That's what you have to do. Once that process is done, then we jump into the redevelopment process. During the redevelopment process, again, there are public hearings that the public is invited to. At that time, you will see an actual plan in place for the subdivision. For the proposal, in that redevelopment plan, it addresses a number of issues. They may want to put covenants on the property that require certain square footage of houses. We, as the city, may want to put certain stipulations in that redevelopment contract. It will go through Planning Commission, it will go through City Council, and it will go through the Community Redevelopment Authority at that time. And at that time, they will also have the numbers there for, you know, what the cost is going to be, what the infrastructure is that they plan to put in there, how they're going to design it, where the ingress and egress is going to come from, if they're going to do cul-de-sac developments that I believe you did see when Clarine passed those out, or whether it's going to go back to that 1979 plan that shows just the through streets going through there. At that time, it will be public knowledge. Everybody will have the opportunity to look at it. Is that good enough?
So
Would you
Judy, in total, about how many meetings is that from the public perspective?
2 public hearings. You're going to have 2 in front of the, so at least 4, if not more.
Mr. Lucas?
You asked my question. I just wanted to clarify approximately how many meetings there were after this point in time that were public. I see this as an early stage of the public process. This is meeting number 3 that's been public.
Correct.
And so this is an early to midpoint in the process, correct?
That is correct.
Mayor Kelleher, yeah, this is a real difficult thing for me. This is my home ground. I live in Russian Olive. Bought my home from Gil and his family. And
1960.
Yeah, it was.
1980.
1890.
Yeah.
We lived out there for 40. Matter of fact, we're one of the homes that's 40 years that caused this thing. But I have a lot of respect for Gil. I really do. But it's really difficult for me, and I just want everybody to understand. And I was thinking, Jessica Braithwaite? Yeah, I just want to tell you, my children rode their bicycles to Osgood, down Eugene and Willow. So it just shows you, maybe we weren't very good parents, I don't know. I mean, that's the way that's been there, and I cringed then, I cringe now. I see the young mothers going down the street, the kids on bicycles. I worry about you. Eugene does need to be addressed. I think that's one of the things the city has to look at here. I just want you to understand, I've heard you people. I am your elected representative. I'm going to have to vote against this. And just, Gil, I'm sorry. It's just that, I'm your representative. You've expressed a concern to me, but I want you, I don't know if it's going to pass or not. I have no control over that. So, but, I want you to keep yourselves informed on this because it could go on. So, you're doing the right thing. You're coming here to a public hearing about this, and I wish everybody the best. But I just wanted to express that. This is my home turf, and I love that neighborhood just like you do, okay?
Mr. Mayor? I was in a similar situation when the Dixie and Phillip project in that area, because I live right across the street from it. And I had a few neighbors tell me they weren't going to talk to me anymore after I voted in favor of it. And, frankly, I wish they would have just designated my house too, because maybe that would have made people feel better. Because, in my time on the Planning Commission and now that I've been on the council, this has come up a number of times. And I understand why people are concerned. I don't like the way the studies reference blight and substandard and that, but it's purely just a designation, and I think we're fortunate that it's under local control. That's one of the unique things about this program. If you look at opportunity zones, that's federal or state control. If you look at the Nebraska Imagine Act and the other incentives out there, we don't have our finger in any of it. This is the economic development program and the way to finance infrastructure that we have local control on. The blight and substandard is nothing more than designating a zone to target development and to help development. That's all it is. In my opinion, it has absolutely no bearing on the value of a property. And I can tell you that the properties around the other subdivisions have all enjoyed the same kind of incline that other properties in the market have. I appreciate the presentation, but tax values tend to get looked at, kind of in slots. And I work with appraisals and market values all the time in my profession. And all of the areas around TIF projects have inclined in value with the same attributes that the rest of the community has. We had neighborhood folks who had very articulate and professional testimony, just like you guys did tonight, when we had the Dixie and Phillip project, which is barely becoming a nice subdivision. It's near completion. When we went to A in Lakeview, there was people with a lot of concerns about that. Same thing off Lakeview. We went over to Pacific Place, the apartment complex at Pacific Place. Neighbors were really upset about that. Even on East Phillip, I think there was a little less controversy at Eagle Estates, if that's the right name, Judy. That had more multifamily neighbors and there was a little bit less concerned. I remember sitting here through Hobby Lobby and hearing everybody's argument of why we shouldn't have been involved with helping Hobby Lobby and Menards and these other things. Our track record as a city is very good with these projects. There's not a one of these TIF projects that I think was a mistake or a failure. And so I'm absolutely in favor of this, because the reason we're here is we can't afford to build houses, and we desperately need it. And our community has a serious conundrum going on right now. But I just want to try to assure those who testified tonight, I hear everything you're saying, and the Eugene infrastructure is a problem. It's a city and a county problem that we're all very aware of. We do need to work on solutions for it. I think you're absolutely right about that. But, you know, we don't have people here lined up against this tonight who aren't right in this area. And I worry that we're going to spend a lot of our city and taxpayer money reaching out to develop outside of town, and we're going to jump over these areas that are nice build-on neighborhoods. Right where I live, we've had this type of expansion around me, and yeah, at times maybe there's a little bit more traffic, but there's also been way more attention to it. And when we have the TIF process, when it goes to the redevelopment stage, we have way more input as a community on how it gets developed than you would without the TIF process. To give you an example, on Dixie, it was important to this council that the fencing was put up along Phillip. That wouldn't have been required in a typical development, correct, Judy? And there were several other things. In that project, you know, they were locked into doing single-family homes because that was part of the development agreement and that zoning at the time. And so I just want you guys to know that I hear everything you're saying, but in my opinion, it's for the good of the community to keep this project moving forward. But we should, as a council, if this would pass tonight, we have to be very attentive to the details of the next stage. We can't just jump over that, and I don't think anybody at this table does that, because we understand how important all those things you guys are concerned about really are.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Reeker, you have the floor.
Clarine called me and we chatted for quite a while this afternoon. I guess it was this afternoon, sometime today.
I lost track too.
And I told her that I've typically opposed using tax increment financing for housing and commercial. And I think this is a classic example, from my perspective, why I oppose it. There's been a lot of discussion tonight about the need to upgrade the infrastructure that's out there. Eugene's got to be redone. The streets that are there do need certainly some maintenance, albeit they're in pretty good shape. But Eugene, I think, is the one that really needs some work done on it. And then without TIF, what normally would happen is that the Wilkinsons would go ahead and develop this property, and that property would go on the tax rolls immediately. And the money that's generated from the taxes, then a part of that would go back to the city. And that money would go back to the city, and then the city could pay to upgrade Eugene. The way tax increment financing works, that money will be deferred to the developer, and the city will have to come up with those additional funds to repair those streets. And this is a classic example of why I don't like TIF for housing. Because the city is going to have to expend money to do repairs and maintenance and upgrades. And we're not going to be getting the tax revenue to do it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Donna?
Thank you for coming, and I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to get up here and speak for the first time, but usually your passion will cancel out your fear. So I just want to thank you for doing that. And I wish the law wasn't written the way it was, because in my mind, Blight and Substandard should be that property that you want to redevelop. That should be what's blighted and substandard, not housing down here or over there. And I think when the law was used in an Omaha situation, that's the way it was done. The law started in California in 1959, and it's come out this way, and it's gotten twisted and turned, and I don't like the way it's used. And then I always hear, well, these things wouldn't happen without TIF. Well, somebody must have a magic wand, because I don't know that. There was a project turned down, a TIF request turned down off Lakeview, and a relative of yours continues to build a house, and that's probably one of the 6 permits, so maybe we're purchased to build. I had a long discussion with him one time, and he told me he just couldn't do it without TIF because he has to compete with everybody else. But he is continuing to build homes. And so I would like to just see the free enterprise market do its job. Another thing, I noticed in this study that I think it's 1008 Russian Olive is actually a vacant lot. It's a person owns it and it looks like a park. I have also driven out there. But I'm not sure, but the study may have put a house on it. I'm not sure how that worked, but.
Well, it's my vacant lot.
It's your vacant lot. Well, it's very pretty, I will say, so.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
But, you know what? My lot line is right on my fireplace. My sewage is actually on the other lot. And when my husband come down to the city to ask about it, why the lot line was there. Oh, it was that one that just went through the cracks. That's the only answer we got. So we had to buy that lot so we wouldn't spend a few $1,000 moving the sewage.
Well, I mean, there's this another story about why sometimes government just doesn't do it like it should, and I'm sorry. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mark?
Just a quick comment. I have trouble with this process too. I mean, you have the vacant land. I don't understand why we drag in houses when they're not going to be developed. Mr. Wilkinson isn't responsible to fix those streets and those sidewalks, which I, like others, drove out and looked at. And I think they're in pretty good condition. I mean, yeah, you got a little water in the gutter, but you do after your sprinklers run. You know, it's just the way it is. And we're told that this raises our property tax base, which is true, and that because of that, we'll be able to keep our taxes down. But 4 years ago, there was a ballot initiative to raise our sales tax 0.5% to fix roads, because it doesn't generate enough money to fix roads. And the Sugarberry thing, you know, that was it. Within 30 days, Wilk Builders was back, and they were building when they could not afford to build without TIF. So, you know, it's just morally wrong to take other people's money to give to the developer. I know you all have to make enough money, and with this, I think you make your preferred profit margin, return on investment, which, you know, I don't fault anybody for wanting that, you know. But it's just, it's not a good way to do it. So that probably covers it.
Other thoughts or comments from the council?
I just have to say that I appreciate everybody coming out tonight, you know, and speaking. It just shows truly that North Platte's a special place. This is a great town. It's a great city. Unfortunately, that those terms Blight and Substandard are a negative connotation. I mean, it's so, but I think it's a good move for North Platte to move forward with a housing development. I think we're working with a local construction company, and like Councilman Lucas was saying, we have meetings beyond this,
And we're gonna be working with the public, with the individuals out there, and hopefully we can figure something out with the infrastructures and Eugene. So I think it's a good thing.
So I grew up on Oak and Eugene, so this area is near and dear to my heart. I love it. It's a beautiful community. I got a lot of friends and family that live over there, and we have an issue. We desperately need housing in our community, and here we have a local developer willing to do this. So I'm hoping that my friends and family over there will still talk to me when this is done, because I do believe in this project, and I believe in you guys over there, and this is fantastic. I will say this, one thing that I am concerned about, and I have spoken to many of you about this, is the traffic and how the infrastructure is going to be handled. And that's something that we will definitely take a look at and manage, because that is a real problem that has been overlooked since I was a kid out there. So I definitely heard you today. So appreciate everybody's statements, though.
Other thoughts and comments? Clarine, you had some information to pass on. Do you still want to do that, or do you want to just wait?
Just real quick.
Okay.
It's okay if I addressed everybody here versus addressing you?
You got to get close to the microphone.
Do I have to? They're the ones listening to me. The reason why we did it the way we did is so that we could have your input. And, you know, I haven't had a chance to speak to anybody. I know Mark had a call with Rachel, but we really haven't talked to anybody in the neighborhood. And we want to do this. We've talked, Mark and I intensely discuss things a lot. And we've talked about selling it. We've talked about not doing anything with it. We want to do this because we don't want someone else to do it. And we want to work with you guys because we don't think someone else will work with you like we will work with you. So come into our office. We are downtown. You don't have to look very hard to find us. My door is always open. Mark is usually hard to find, but I'm there to talk to. I want your ideas. I want to know what you guys want to see in that subdivision. And it could be phased in. It doesn't all have to happen at once. It might not all happen at once. It all depends on who we can get to build, how long it will take them to build. My husband and I have been building houses in North Platte for 20 years come this January. And I've been pushing housing in North Platte ever since. The whole process. We went from a $30,000 home in 1999 that we purchased together as not yet newlyweds. We broke the law there, or broke the Christian law, I guess. And now we don't live in city limits, but we are North Platte to the core. My husband's building the homes at the Dixie subdivision, and, you know, he is just as much a part of the neighborhood as the homeowners that are coming in. Every single subcontractor lives near North Platte or in North Platte, and they know everybody by name. We're trying to do this with the neighborhoods, not against you guys. So I know several of you in the crowd, we've known each other for years, and don't be afraid to call us up or to walk in and to talk through all of this. So I appreciate your time. I know your concerns now, and we're not trying to do this behind your back. We're just trying to follow the steps and to do what we need to do to get this done. And I am more than 100% sure that if we don't get this blighted and substandard, this will not happen with us. We might auction off the property, it might sit another 10 years. This guy right here walked into my office and said, I want to see this accomplished before I die. So that's why I'm here. I'm supporting this guy right here. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Clarine. Anything else from the council? Okay, the moment is upon us. Calling the question on item number 24. Well, really? Come on, you guys. For the reason people are cackling evilly is because I now have to decide whether or not to vote. And in the mayor's position, you sometimes get stuck with these things, but that's okay. It's part of the job. If you've ever listened to me talk or listened to me on the radio, you'll know that I'm certainly in favor of development. And I got that from my father, who was a civil engineer. And as I drive through the streets of town of North Platte, I can think about the streets that I helped him stake or repave or something when I was in high school and college. And he's been gone for about 20 years. So anytime I drive through a development, I look at all the little problems that occurred because I learned them from my father. And there are those little problems all across North Platte in little places. Yet, one of the challenging things about being a mayor is several times people will come to you and say, there's this problem. Well, they say it more gently than that. They say there's this problem, now go fix it. But you can't cost me any money, you can't upset my neighbors, and you better not upset my dog, or something like that. Okay, I can't help but joke, it's in my nature. But very rarely does someone present with a solution to the problem. Very rarely. Once in maybe every 10 or so issues. They want something or they don't want something, and I suppose that's just the nature of being part of a town, is you have certain people who make things happen and they work through problems and they solve problems and they make the community grow. And then you have some folks that live there, and there's nothing wrong with either approach. But it takes all kinds to make a community. It takes everybody. It takes everybody's approach and everybody's thoughts, and I do appreciate everybody being here tonight. Now, because maybe I have a little more experience with development than maybe some other mayors have in the past, I can look at that neighborhood out there, Eugene, et cetera, and think, what a disservice has been done to that whole area. I mean, Eugene Street is abysmal. It's too skinny. And just a quick lecture on paving law. Mr. Reeker was kind of correct. One of two things has to happen to fix Eugene. One of two things. Either the city pays for it, which you all pay for in your taxes in one form or another, or the city opts to fix it and forces the people along Eugene to pay for it, which would be nearly impossible, by the way, because 51% of them would have to agree to do it. And so what that means to those of you who live out there is unless the city pays for it, it will probably never be fixed, at least in the lifetimes of many of us who are sitting here right now. And it will continue to be a danger except for everyone but Mr. Nisley's children, which is good. Like I said, I have to throw in a little humor. So at this point, I'm going to say this. I'm going to vote in favor of continuing this process, but there will be several other meetings. And to Gil and Clarine, we're going to have to fix the access issue out there somehow. So we need to be thinking about how that's going to happen, or this probably won't make it much further. Everybody agree?
Pretty good partnership, I think.
Yeah, I hope so. And you can't just make me fix it because I can't do it. So. Okay. This item is concluded. Item number 25, approve the claims.
Mr. Mayor, we approve the claims.
Second.
Calling the question and approving the claims. Claims are approved. Public agenda request. We request our city employees and respect our city employees. We request that any complaints or criticisms of employees not be aired in a public meeting. Concerns about employees should be brought to the attention of the city administrator or the mayor. Individuals in violation will be declared out of order. Do we have anyone that would like to propose an agenda request item? I'm going to guess no. No one's approaching the center there. Mr. Reeker?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Motion by Reeker, second by Vols to adjourn the meeting. Calling the question on adjournment. Mr. Flanders, you have to vote. Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Drive safely. Have a nice night.
Isn't there a cot out here somewhere?